For 42 years, Walter Harrison delivered mail. Rain, snow, heat, cold. Every day, every street, every house. He knew every family, every dog, every broken mailbox that needed replacing. But there was one letter he never delivered. One letter that got lost in a system that moved millions of pieces of mail every single day. One letter that should have reached a mother's hands in 1971, but DIDN single quotes T. Until now. This is the story of a promise 50 years late, a mother who never stopped hoping, and a mailman who discovered that some deliveries matter more than all the others combined. Welcome to the human stories. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, from which city are you watching today? And if you believe some stories need to be told, no matter how late they arrive, hit that subscribe button, because some messages are worth waiting a lifetime to hear. It was Walter Harrison's last day. 42 years of service. 15,000 days. 300,000 miles walked. Millions of letters delivered. The small post office in Greenfield, Pennsylvania had thrown him a party. Cake, balloons, a plaque with his name engraved in brass. His co-workers had signed a card. Someone had made a photo collage of him through the decades. Young Walt. Hair dark. Smile wide. Middle-aged Walt. A few gray streaks. Reading glasses appearing. Old Walt. White hair. Slower steps. But the same steady hands that had held letters for 4 decades. "You've earned this, Walt," his supervisor said, shaking his hand. "Enjoy retirement." Walt nodded, smiled, said thank you. But inside, something felt unfinished. He couldn't name it. Couldn't explain it. Just a feeling. Like a door left slightly open. A task incomplete. After the party ended and everyone went home, Walt stayed. He walked through the empty building. The sorting room. The back office. The storage area where old mail equipment gathered dust. He didn't know why he was doing this. Maybe it was ritual. Maybe it was goodbye. Or maybe something deeper was pulling him. He opened the door to the old file room, a place no one visited anymore. Metal shelves lined the walls. Boxes stacked high. Decades of paperwork. Old ledgers. Retired routing maps. And in the far corner, behind a filing cabinet that hadn't moved in 30 years, he saw it. A cardboard box. Small. Worn. Taped shut with yellowed packing tape. Walt pulled it out. Dust rose in clouds. He coughed, waved it away. On the side, written in faded marker, Undeliverable 1971. His hands stopped. 50 years ago, he set the box on a desk, carefully peeled back the tape. It cracked and split, brittle with age. Inside were letters. Maybe 20 of them. All stamped. All addressed. All undelivered. Some had wrong addresses. Some had illegible handwriting. Some were damaged, torn, stained, but one caught his eye. A single envelope, clean, intact, addressed clearly. The return address read, PFC, James Coleman, U.S. Army, Apo, San Francisco, 96384 Vietnam. Walt single quotes S breath caught. He picked up the envelope carefully, held it to the light. The address, Mrs. Margaret Coleman, 418 Elm Street, Greenfield. P.A. Walt knew that address. He delivered mail there for 42 years. Mrs. Coleman still lived there. He turned the envelope over. The back flap was sealed, untouched. His hands trembled. A letter from Vietnam. From a soldier. To his mother. Never delivered. Walt looked at the postmark. March 3, 1971. He set the letter down gently. His mind. Race. Vietnam. James Coleman. He knew that name. Not from mail routes. From memory. From a place. He'd buried deep. Walt had been in Vietnam, 1970 to 1971, Army, 101st Airborne. He'd served with a James Coleman, young kid, 19, brown hair, always smiling, always talking about home, about his mom, about the letters he wrote every week. Walt closed his eyes. He remembered March 1971. An ambush, gunfire, explosions, chaos. James Coleman didn't make it home. Walt had, but James hadn't. And now, 50 years later, Walt held a letter James had written to his mother. A letter that never arrived. Walt sat down. His chest felt heavy. For 50 years. Margaret Coleman had lived 3 blocks away. For 50 years, Walt had delivered her mail, grocery store flyers, utility bills, birthday cards from distant relatives. But never this, never the one letter that mattered most. James's last words to his mother, lost in a box, forgotten, until now. Walt looked at the envelope again. He knew what he had to do. Walt didn't open the letter. It wasn't his to read, but he needed to be sure. He spent the next 2 days researching old military records, online databases, Vietnam casualty lists. And there it was. Private First Class James Robert Coleman, U.S. Army, 101st Airborne Division, killed in action. March 15, 1971. Location: Thua Thien Province, South Vietnam. Age: 1912. Days after he mailed the letter. 12 days. James had written to his mother, sealed the envelope, sent it through military postal channels. And then he died. The letter had gotten lost somewhere in the system, misfiled, misrouted, buried, in a box that no one opened for 50 years, until Walt's last day. Walt looked up Margaret Coleman's information. She was 94 years old, widowed, living alone in the same house she'd lived in since 1965. Same house James had grown up in, the same house she'd waited in for her son to come home. But he never did. Just a folded flag, a telegram, a grave in a distant cemetery. No final words. No goodbye. Until now. Walt folded the research papers, put them in his pocket. He picked up the letter, and he drove to 418 Elm Street. The house was small, white siding, a front porch with 2 chairs, flower pots that had seen better days. Walt stood at the door for a long moment. He'd walked up this path 1,000 times, delivering mail, dropping it in the slot, moving on. But today was different. Today. He knocked. The door opened slowly. Margaret Coleman stood there, small, thin, white hair pulled back, eyes still sharp despite her age. She blinked at him. Walter? Is everything all right? She knew him. Of course she did. 42 years of mail delivery. Mrs. Coleman, Walt said quietly, I need to talk to you about something. May I come in? She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. Of course. Inside, the house was neat. Old furniture, photographs on every surface, a lifetime compressed into frames. Walt noticed them immediately. James Coleman, in uniform, young, smiling. James as a boy, playing baseball. James at graduation. Cap and gown. James everywhere. A shrine to a son who never came home. Margaret gestured to the couch. Sit, please. Can I get you something? Coffee? No, ma'am. Thank you. Walt sat. She sat across from him in a worn armchair. What is it, Walter? You look troubled. Walt took a breath. Mrs. Coleman, I need to ask you something. Your son, James, did he write to you? From Vietnam? Her expression softened. Sad, but warm. Every week, she said quietly. Like clockwork. He was a good boy. He always wrote. And ... His last letter. Do you remember it? Margaret's eyes glistened. February 28th, 1971. He wrote about the rain, about missing home, about how he couldn't wait to see me again. Her voice cracked. That was the last one I received. 2 weeks later, they told me he was gone. Walt's throat tightened. Mrs. Coleman, I found something. At the post office. In an old storage room. He reached into his jacket, pulled out the envelope. Margaret's eyes locked onto it. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Her hand flew to her mouth. Is that? Walt nodded. It's from James. Mailed March 3rd, 1971. It never made it to you. It got lost. I found it on my last day. Today. Margaret stood slowly, walked toward him, her hands shaking. That's his writing. Yes, ma'am. She took the envelope, held it like it was made of glass. Tears ran down her face. 50 years, she whispered. I waited 50 years. Walt's voice was thick. I'm so sorry it took this long. Margaret shook her head. You found it. You brought it to me. That's all that matters. She sat back down, stared at the envelope. I don't know if I can open it. Walt understood. You don't have to. Not now, not ever. But it's yours. It's always been yours. Margaret looked up at him. Were you there? In Vietnam? Walt nodded. Double quotes. Yes, ma'am. Same unit. I knew James. Her eyes widened. You knew my boy? I did. Tell me, please. Walt's chest ached. He was brave, kind. He talked about you all the time. He loved you more than anything. Margaret's tears fell harder. Did he? Did he suffer? Walt had thought about this for 50 years. The truth was complicated, but the truth she needed was simple. No, ma'am. It was fast. He wasn't alone. We were with him. Margaret nodded slowly. Thank you. Thank you for telling me. She looked down at the letter, took a deep breath. I'm going to read it. Walt started to stand. I can leave, give you privacy. No, she said firmly. Stay. Please. You brought him back to me. You should be here. Walt sat back down. Margaret carefully opened the envelope, pulled out 2 sheets of paper, thin, worn, lined with neat handwriting. She unfolded them and began to read. Margaret's voice was soft at first, shaking, but it grew stronger as she read. March 3rd, 1971, Dear Mom, I hope this letter finds you well. I know I just wrote a few days ago, but I wanted to write again. I'm not sure why. Maybe it's because the rain finally stopped and the sun came out, and it made me think of home, of sitting on the porch with you, drinking lemonade. Or maybe it's because something feels different today. I can't explain it. Just a feeling. Margaret paused. Her hands trembled. Walt's chest tightened. James had known. Somehow, he'd known. Margaret continued. I want you to know something. Mom, in case I don't get to say it again, I'm not scared. I know that sounds strange. Being here, in this place, with everything that's happening, but I'm not scared, because you raised me to be strong, to do what's right, to stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm doing something that matters. I'm with good men, men who would die for each other. And I die for them. I hope I never have to. I hope I come home. I hope I see you again. I hope I get to sit on that porch and drink lemonade and tell you stories. That made you laugh. But if I don single quotes T ... is something. Happens ... I need you to know that I'm okay with it. Because I live the way you taught me to live ... with honor, with courage, with love. Margaret's voice broke. She couldn't continue. Walt stood, walked to her, knelt beside her chair. Mrs. Coleman. She shook her head, wiped her eyes, took a breath. I need to finish. She looked back at the letter. Mom, if you're reading this, and I'm not there. Don single quotes T be sad. Be proud. I'm proud to be your son. I'm proud to wear this uniform. I'm proud to serve, and I'll carry you with me, always. In my heart, in my thoughts, in every step I take. Thank you for everything. Thank you for making me who I am. I love you, Mom. More than words can say. Your son. James. Margaret folded the letter carefully. Set it in her lap. And wept. Not the tears of new grief, but the tears of a mother who had waited 50 years to hear her son say goodbye. Didn't speak. He just stayed there, kneeling beside her. After a long time, Margaret looked at him. He knew, she whispered. Yes, ma'am. I think he did. And he wasn't scared. No, he wasn't. Margaret touched the letter. I've spent 50 years wondering if he thought of me at the end. If he knew how much I loved him. If he was afraid. She looked at Walt. Now I know. Walt nodded. He thought of you every day. Mrs. Coleman. Every single day. Margaret smiled through her tears. Thank you, Walter. Thank you for bringing him home. The story didn't end there. Margaret Coleman asked Walt if she could share the letter. Not all of it, but parts of it. She wanted other mothers to know. Other families who had lost sons, daughters, husbands, fathers. She wanted them to know that even 50 years later, love finds a way. Walt helped her scan the letter. She posted it online. With a simple caption. My son wrote this 50 years ago. It just arrived today. Some words are worth the wait. Within hours, it had been shared 10,000 times. By the next day, 100,000. Veterans groups, military families, news outlets. Everyone wanted to hear the story. The lost letter. The mother who waited. The mailman who found it on his last day. Walt didn't do interviews. Neither did Margaret. They didn't need to. The letter spoke for itself. Something else happened. Post offices across the news. Country started checking. Old storage rooms. Forgotten boxes. Misfiled mail. And they found more letters. Dozens of them. Letters from soldiers who never came home. Letters that had been lost for decades. And one by one, they were delivered. To mothers. To widows. To children who had never known their fathers. All because of James Coleman's letter. All because Walt Harrison looked in a forgotten corner on his last day. 3 months later, Walt returned to Margaret's house. She'd asked him to come, said she had something to show him. When he arrived, she led him to the backyard. There, beneath an old oak tree, was a small memorial, a stone bench, a plaque. It read, in memory of PFC. James Robert Coleman, 1951-1971. Not scared, proud. Margaret sat on the bench. Walt sat beside her. I had it made, she said quietly, with money I've been saving. I always thought I'd use it to visit his grave, but I can't travel anymore. So I brought him here, where he belongs. Walt looked at the plaque. At the words James had written 50 years ago. It's beautiful, Walt said. Margaret nodded. I read his letter every day, sometimes twice. I know every word by heart now. She looked at Walt. Do you know what the hardest part was? All these years? What? Not knowing if he was okay. At the end, if he was in pain, if he was scared, if he thought of me. She touched the letter, folded in her pocket. Now I know. He wasn't scared. He was proud. And he thought of me. She smiled. That's all a mother needs to know. Walt's throat tightened. He was lucky to have you. No, Margaret said softly. I was lucky to have him, even if it was only for 19 years. They sat in silence for a while. Birds sang. Wind moved through the trees. And for the first time in 50 years, Margaret Coleman felt at peace. Walter Harrison retired. He spent his days gardening, reading, visiting Margaret Coleman once a week. They'd sit on that bench, talk about James, share stories. Remember. And every March 3rd, the anniversary of the letter, they'd read it together. Out loud. So James's words would be heard. So his love would echo. So he would never be forgotten. Because some letters take 50 years to arrive, but they're worth the wait. Harrison delivered mail for 42 years. Millions of letters. But only one changed everything. Only one reminded him why every delivery matters. Because somewhere, someone is waiting. For news. For hope. For love. And sometimes, that message arrives exactly when it's supposed to, even if it's 50 years late. So now I ask you, have you ever received a message that changed everything? A letter, a call, a word from someone you thought you'd never hear from again? Tell us in the comments. Share your story. Because here at the Human Stories, we believe that some words are worth waiting a lifetime to hear. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe. Help us honor the voices that refuse to be silenced by time. We'll see you in the next story. And until then, remember, some messages take 50 years to arrive, but love never gets lost. It just waits for the right moment to be found.